So, my best friend Daniel forced me to watch the Team Absolution video showcasing Liberator Rush versus NoCL. He described what happened before I watched it, and stated that NoCL won after being grade locked for multiple turns. I didn't really want to watch it because I honestly don't watch things too much on YouTube. I prefer to read, but I mean, he made me do it, so I did it. I really regret having seen the video because it more or less set me off. Let's start with a few disclaimers. 1. I have only watched 3 of Team Absolution's videos. They were all pertaining to rushing and rush decks. I won't say whether or not they're competent at this card game. I don't really know and I don't really care. They are shit at rushing and I'm going to call them out on it. 2. This isn't a Defend Alice or Defend VMundi video. I will shit on the VMundi Grade 1 Rush deck and explain why it is suboptimal, and why all of the people who took it to tournaments lost other than the one guy who randomly top 4'd at a Vangola event that had like 30 people, even though he guarded a 10k attack with a 5k shield, but that's a different story for a different day. 3. I honestly would love to be partial, but I don't think I have it in me, so I guess this is going to be impartial fair, and everyone and everything gets shit on, even me. That being said, let's get into the nitty-gritty. There are 2 very wide, sweeping opinions about Grade 1 Rush. You have one side saying that it's game-breaking, overpowered, and nothing beats it consistently. As most of you listening can probably guess, they're completely wrong. Then you have people saying that Grade 1 Rush is very easy to beat and is a completely trash deck concept. These people are also completely wrong. I really want to drive this point home. If one side of the argument wants to make Grade 1 Rush out to be a 2 out of 10 deck, the other side wants it to be a 10 out of 10 deck. This is just nonsensical. It's neither. A well-built Grade 1 Rush deck, i.e. not the Liberator Rush deck that VMundi is running, is about a 6.5 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10. That's not just viable, that's teetering on being a good deck. To pad this point, I went 6-0 with Seeker Rush at Team League Ohio, where many people got to see me melt faces with it. It used to be an 8.5 to 9.5 out of 10 deck in the tail end of G Season 1, which is why I waited so long to release my previous Grade 1 Rush video, because it honestly would have been unhealthy for the game if it released in G Set 1, and I didn't want that. Grade 1 Rush is by no means amazing, Tier 1, or a 60% plus win rate on everything type of deck, especially not anymore, but I honestly can't place it anywhere other than where it belongs. It's a solid 65 out of 100. It's a viable, but not competitive deck. Now, why am I calling out Team Absolution for their video? Well, let's be honest here, it was trash. There are a whopping 3 things that you need to know how to do in order to play Grade 1 Rush. 1. If you're playing an Archetype deck, you do not ride a non-Archetype card. They screwed that up. They rode Gareth, which is literally the only Grade 1 in the deck that you are not supposed to ride. 2. Don't guard for your rear guards because that's the only way that you can have a hand deficit to the point where you can't have a full field. They screwed that up by guarding for what was a 7k vanilla because they built all of their rows incorrectly because they rode the wrong thing. 3. You always have a full field. Keep stronger units in the back unless you need the plus power on attack to hit a stage. Don't be afraid to call triggers. They failed both of those. In one case, because they rode Gareth, they made their Holy Alkalites into 7k vanillas and kept them in the front, losing a 7k attacker when it was attacked into, when they could have just lost their 5k starter by placing the starter in the front. They also illegally played Guinevere with a non-Liberator Vanguard. I could list at least a dozen misplays by the Grade 1 Rush player in this video, and they still uploaded this garbage. It's like they just wanted to poop the video out and didn't care how bad they made themselves look just to have more content, views, likes, and probably ad revenue. And we gave that to them for this trash video. Go us! My main point here isn't so much to trash talk Team Absolution as to trash talk Team Absolution trash talking a deck that they don't know how to play. If I had the exact same hand with that deck that they had against the exact same NoCL hand, I would have won the game. That's why you just can't take any critique that they're doing of Grade 1 Rush seriously, because it's done completely in ignorance. They were lazy, they didn't try, and they literally just slapped shit together and made their final judgment, and that's kind of bullshit. They were literally so inexcusably bad that even though it's no secret that I greatly dislike the VMundi community, I still have to defend their shitty deck list from this complete absurdity. Now, I feel like I'm ready to transition away from Team Absolution. They got enough attention, taking the Flavor of the Month hate boner, and getting more popular off of it. Let's talk about Grade 1 Rush's current potential spot in the metagame, and what has caused them to drop so much in viability, and why I personally wouldn't pick it in this format. At this point in time, I think Grade 1 Rush is a solid deck. Not amazing, but definitely not trash. In the G-Set 1-5 era, outside of the Ripple matchup, and a few outlying cases of some older decks coming back with some support, the meta was pretty heavily dominated by builds that Grade 1 Rush completely shut down. This was the prime for Grade 1 Rush, and it was a heavy contender, winning 60 to 70% of its matches against the majority of the meta. This probably sounds a lot like what VMundi is saying currently is the case. May or may not have something to do with the fact that I said it in a video 2 years ago and they were stealing my content, just like they stole my Tochkaze Grade 1 Rush list. But what can I do? I don't even care when people steal my lists, ideas, or content. Draw triggers are the worst triggers. Wrote that article a year before VMundi did. I know that that's just how card games and the internet work. You know, plagiarism and all that. Tangent aside, we pretty much all know what happened to Grade 1 Rush. At least, those of us who have read any card releases since the Fighters Collection with no CL in it. So, now we have Royal Paladins as a huge part of the metagame. They have 12k restanding rear guards, which is a magic number against Grade 1s, not counting the 12k unit that attacked and then called that 12k unit. Yeah, pretty sure that 5 attacks is more than 3 if my calculamications are correct. They also make 14k rows that draw them a card for 1 card from hand and counterblast 1, soul blast 1. And they aren't punished at all for that row's power because Grade 1 Rush doesn't get a right up to Grade 3. They don't have that 11k base. So Grade 1 Rush loses to Royals because they don't lose hand advantage while riding and have a better rush than Grade 1 Rush. It's just a better deck. And the Blaster engine was the biggest thing that honestly made Grade 1 Rush obsolete. No CL has many ponies that are very good anti-rush mechanisms. Once they hit Grade 3, they can start chain damaging free cards into their hand, and it spirals out of control. A good chunk of that deck isn't locked by Generation Break, and their stand triggers simply cannot be punished because your Vanguard is a 7k base unit on the Vanguard circle. They edge out. Raging Form Dragon has insane game-ending potential. Judge Bow is still plus 1 million if it ever goes off. They have non-Generation Break locked retirements. I personally haven't seen this matchup yet, but hey, don't take it from me, take it from a VMundi user themselves. Apparently Grade 1 Rush doesn't do so well. And apparently they're bad for not testing and having Grade 1 Rush win? Huh. Machining can make on-hit stun rows everywhere and have one of the best Grade 2 games out there. There are a few decks that can counter Grade 1 Rush a bit better, but a 17k on-hit double stun and stand a rearguard row is still pretty tough for a Grade 1 Rush deck to deal with. They also get to make a board from Soul or can potentially stun the Grade 1 Vanguard, which is just for the lulz. They have a really good matchup, they just do. Chaos Breaker, literally after having played the matchup 25 times, I can explain this very easily. Ride to Grade 3. Win. That's it. Chaos Breaker needs to double G-Assist, fail a G-Assist, or have 4+ Grade 3s in hand, while the Grade 1 Rush deck hits a critical every single drive check in order to lose. Chaos Breaker needs to have an insane bout of misfortune to not win. Mind you, I bring these up because other than Gear Chronicle and Grand Blue, this is pretty much our entire meta right now. Kagero can slip in here and there, and like Grand Blue, Kagero has a roughly even matchup. So that means that out of all of these decks that are meta, Grade 1 Rush literally only beats Gear Chronicle. And, well, I guess since Gear Chronicle is Cancer, I mean, if you want to fight Cancer with Cancer, go for it. The long and short that I'm pointing out here is that Grade 1 Rush was a great meta call before, and is a bad meta call now. Think of it like rock, paper, scissors. If Grade 1 Rush is scissors, Gear Chronicle is paper, and the rest of the meta is rock, assuming equal representation, even though Gear Chronicle is a little bit more represented, you're going to lose a lot if you're playing Grade 1 Rush. The sad thing is, if VMundi would have come in and been super popular in promoting this deck a year and a half ago, they would have actually been right. But the game has evolved into something different, and Grade 1 Rush simply cannot keep up with it, especially when none of the major Grade 1 Rush decks have received support in over a year. Moving on, let's talk about VMundi's Grade 1 Rush deck. I toyed around with Liberator Rush ages before VMundi released the list. Just like Seeker Rush was made ages before I promoted my list for it. It wasn't anywhere near as potent as Seeker Rush, so I dropped it. They seem to have this strange idea that having 8 Sentinels is more important than making good rows in a Rush deck. I ask you, what is the purpose of a Grade 1 Rush deck? Anyone can answer that. You take your hand, you place it on the field, you swing at their face, you win the game. Games should not be being prolonged extensively, because that is a loss condition for Grade 1 Rush. Additionally, many games that you do win going into later turns are typically done from whittling your opponent down, being 5 to 10k shield off of lethal each time. Now, needing these defensive cards to compensate for a weakness that only exists because your rows are too weak from running too many defensive cards seems like a self-imposed problem. Seeker Rush can make 16k like it's literally nothing. 17k is not hard either. They have 12 10k attackers, 4 9k attackers, 4 8k boosts, 4 cards that can fish out any other card in the deck, compared to just 8 10k attackers for Liberators, 4 8k boosts, and 2 10k boosters for the Vanguard Circle. I don't think Golds are winning the Consistency Award here. So, is the Liberator Rush deck good or bad? It's honestly pretty bad. I'd say 3.5 out of 10 versus Seeker Rush being a 6.5 out of 10. And the big difference comes from Seekers having 8 10k attackers that work on the Vanguard circle. Golds just have Holy Alkalite and Calling Lu behind the Vanguard, which they don't even max. So this is important because the Vanguard row being at 2 stages is the single most important facet for playing a grade 1 rush deck. Because they have to guard for a trigger on your Vanguard whether or not you hit it later in the game. Liberator Rush gets no pass by a 10k shield far too often on their Vanguard circle once the opponent is grade 3, and that's the big killer. Seekers don't have that many issues forcing shield later in the game, and are also far more likely to hit that magic 17k early in the game. Too many times when testing the Gold Paladin version, I was destroyed by 10k shields on turn 1 that would not have been a problem if I had a 17k row. Simply put, a rush deck cannot afford to trade offense for defense. Thus, Seeker Rush, being far better offensively, is the superior deck. It would even win against Gold Paladins because it would force 15k shield from far too many rows, whereas Golds couldn't do that anywhere near consistently. And before anyone says, oh, but they only have 4 more 10ks to make 17k with, keep in mind that the starter in Gangalen, their 9k attacker, can also make 17k. Winkyface.jpg. I will leave that as the final nail in the coffin for that argument. Let's move on to the next subject. I've shit on Team Absolution. I've set the record straight with Grade 1 Rush. I've shit on Liberator Rush. What else can I shit on? How about me? This entire situation is happening because apparently the community no longer recognizes me as the rush deck and mixed deck aficionado that I used to be known as. As the biggest pioneer for unconventional decks in Vanguard, I've been kind of watching from the sidelines wondering why all of this is blowing up, thinking to myself, why isn't anyone coming to me? More so, why is rushing now a VMundi thing? That's a Tim Power Gamer thing. Well, turns out that if you top with a 10k vanilla, you get to get known as the Star Drive guy indefinitely. So all of my analysis, all of my articles, all of my math, all of my unconventional mixed and rush decks are gone. Wasted. I am now and will forever be just Star Drive guy. RIP.